Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskins, still reeling from our last song that we reviewed. However, today we have our final song in this review season of the podcast. This one is called What Kind of God? From the album Wake the Sleeper. I originally reviewed this song with Dave White. You guys know all about Dave. You've heard me talk about him, and he's been on the show many times. So our band for this song is Bernie Shaw on vocals, Mick on guitar, Trevor Boulder on bass, drums is Russell Gilbrook, and of course on keys we have Phil Lanzon. And as I mistakenly said in a previous episode, we are now one member away from the current lineup. The only difference is that Trevor Boulder's on bass on this song. Dave Rimmer is the current bass player. What a nice guy, too. I had the pleasure of interviewing him, and just a really nice, pleasant demeanor, great to talk to, very intelligent, very talented musician. And then he gets on stage, and the beast is just unleashed. He is a monster player. Really enjoyed seeing him perform live, as with the rest of the band. Just incredible. For your most recent and updated information, go to uriah-heep.com. That is the site that is created and run by Dave White himself. Don't ask in the forums what's going on. Go to the site. That's the most up-to-date place that you can find information. So that being said, we've got a long song to do today, so let's jump right into it. Here it is, What Kind of God? From Uriah Heep. You know, I love this introduction. It's got that military march feel to it without it being like a strict military march, but on the snare. But what I love about it most is it just has that, I don't know how to explain it. It's like that feeling of waking up. It's the early morning. You're getting your day started. You don't know necessarily what's ahead, but there's something's going to happen today. It's going to be a big day, and you feel that. And I don't know if it's the fact that we don't have anything in the higher register, that we've just got this, mid-low range tones right now, and just this really interesting picking. But it's kind of mellow, but you feel like something's going to come up. So it's just the beginning of something. There's a line, I guess I could best describe this feeling with a line from a song called Rainbow Demon from Demons and Wizards, riding on in the midst of morning. And I feel like this is like that early morning time. I feel like there's, just a little bit of fog out there. It's not really bright out just yet. And it actually reminds me of my brother had joined a business, and we were passing out flyers in our neighborhood very, very early one morning, and the sun wasn't even up when we started, and I was listening to Dream Mare, and this reminds me like of that morning, just like watching the earliest cracks of the sun start lighting the sky over the mountains in Colorado, and it just has that feel to it. Not anything to do with the music of Dream Mare, but just that experience. I love when a singer who is a good rock singer that has, some grit in their voice, when they can sing gently and still show signs of that grit without singing harsh. I absolutely love that. Bernie's got such a great voice for rock, but he's got a really good voice for this too. This more gentle style of singing. We don't hear it a whole lot, but when we do, it's like a real treat.
The war cry was blazing, and the loss of my brothers and sons were all in the name of civilization.
I want to point out too, I love the organ on this song too. It's the Hammond sound without the distortion. It's just these nice, really clean organ sounds, and there's a little bit of oscillation on them, which sounds nice. And that with the, combined with the snare drumming is a really interesting combination of sounds. I really like the way that those two things work together. And then of course we've got bass backing it all up, but it sounds really good. I love the feel of this. Musically, it's so interesting. I mean, it's got to go somewhere. This is not going to be the whole song. Something else is going to happen. And it's a 6.5 minute song. We're 1:13 in, but, even if it's the first time you hear it, that there's going to be more to it than this. It's Uriah Heep. But I really like this. I could ride this for a while.
So came the invasion across from a faraway place.
This is that classic vocal layering that I talked about before with Bernie. I just love when he harmonizes his own voice. It sounds so good. Got a little bit of guitar there, emphasizing some emotion. Another thing I wanted to point out, I don't think I've talked about this before, but when drummers play licks like this, something that's not a beat, this is really it's almost exploratory. It has a repetition to it. It is a pattern, but it doesn't have a beat to it. So what drummers will do a lot of times, and you can hear it very faintly in the background if you listen closely, there's you can hear it more in the non-vocal sections, but you'll hear a little bit of hi-hat, and that's usually the drummer tapping their foot on the hi-hat pedal to keep the time, to keep the count, and to keep the pace, to make sure that the tempo stays even.
To the new world with guns and new order. They gave us religion and took away all of our rights and forced us to live behind their new border.
I really love these guitar notes, these longer notes that we're hearing over that muted rhythm. It's such a great sound. The sound on this song is, the blend of instruments and what they're playing, it's not from a mixing standpoint, but just how they've chosen to write and perform the song is just fantastic. It's got such a good mood to it, and such an interesting feel. And of course, you layer Bernie's vocals on top of that, and you've just got another winner.
The four winds blow and bring a new vision where children laugh without fear. The land will speak, the people will listen. But yesterday my life was fading with every reason to die. 10 miles to the north as I rode my red horse in the dying sun.
So powerful when it kicks in. It's much heavier, more rich and full now. Interesting, looking at the waveform, it's just a solid block. It's definitely brick wall limited, but not in a way where I feel like we're really losing dynamics. I could use a little bit more low end in the bass maybe, because I hear the bass doing a lot of stuff, but it's not really buried, but it's not prominent either. I think that could stand out a bit more. But apart from that, the sound is fantastic, and it's just a very powerful song. If I remember right, this was the one that had quite the history, the story behind the song that Dave and I talked about on his episode. So you may want to go back and listen to that one. I know we talked about, I'm pretty sure it was this one, and Not Your Only Son. We'll have to go back and listen to that, but I'm pretty sure this was the one. What I find really fascinating about this is that it feels like everything is up front in the mix, and that's just not possible, but somehow they've managed to do it. I feel like the guitar's up front, the organs are up front, the snare, the bass might be slightly behind, but everything else is just like it's all right up front. I feel more like I'm in the middle of the band than I am watching the band, which is usually how you get a song. It's just like everything is huge, and I love that. I love that slight delay on Mick's guitar. I love the organ sound. Everything is just fantastic. I'm really digging this song.
The fighting is over. No matter what fear they might bring, my country will live. The dust clouds are falling. I stood by the river and breathing the air that is life within the Black Hills.
Now you'll notice when it changed to this part, we've changed the snare drum to just a straight ride cymbal, but the guitars have not been, they've been a little more muted, but they're also more in the background now. They've taken a back seat to the organ, which the organ has now stayed in the foreground with the vocals, and everything else has kind of dropped down a little bit. So the sonic quality of the song has completely changed and opened up a lot of space for Bernie to really cut through.
My spiritual calling.
And here the feeling completely changes again, just like that. What we had on the snare, we now have on toms, and a hit on the snare instead of a buzz roll or something like gentle. We actually have like a really good, powerful snap. We've got a pounding kick drum in there, and it's really amazing how simple that can change the dynamics. Also, from a melodic standpoint, we've got just that half step change in the note for just a second, and then we go back, and that is kind of a lead into something. You're like, okay, we're building up to something here. Not sure what, but we're going to find out. And the other thing is that distortion is now back on the organ, that real gritty sound that changes it kind of from that gentle sunrise sound to like rock, and it sounds fantastic. It's just another little subtle thing that happened that you didn't necessarily notice when it happened, but all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, that organ sound is different. And it definitely kind of brings into where we're hearing the vocals as they start to come in more powerful, higher register. Now we're getting more into rock territory. So it's a nice build from that gentleness and the intrigue that we had as we're starting to tell the story into where we're at now, where the passion's really going to start coming through.
Today my life was fading with every reason to die. 10 miles to the north as I rode my red horse in the dying sun. And then when I saw the white soldiers, 100 or more in a line, killed for the land, saying their law will stand. What kind of God do they see?
Listen to that delay on Bernie's voice. That sounds fantastic. And the amazing thing about a lot of the effects that you hear, especially on vocals, they blend into the music so well, or the engineer blends them in, I should say, so well, that a lot of times you don't necessarily hear them. Like, except for a part like this where the other instruments drop out, do you all of a sudden notice there is even a delay on Bernie's voice? You don't hear it during the rest of the parts. It may creep through a little bit, but it's not like you're like, oh, they turned a delay on Bernie's voice. It's there. It blends into the music. It really just all meshes together to make that complete song. And, I'm really back and forth on whether I like this song being Brick Wall Limited or not. I would like to hear a mix of it without that and see how much power could be done through more dynamics and panning as opposed to just pushing that raw volume level. because I think it would change the feeling of the song, that's for sure. But I think it could be interesting to hear it that way. In any case, we have what we have, and it does sound great. I mean, I love the power of the fullness of this song. I mean, it really, like, the whole thing just presses down on your chest. It's amazing.
What kind of God can this be?
And yet, you know, a complete different change with about a minute and a half or so to go. It's just like a whole nother song. You know, now we have a real direct drum beat. We're not playing on toms or you know, playing around on the snare doing buzz rolls. We've got something that's much more defined. We've got a really strong bass part there. I love that transition, though, just with bass and drums. It's like in the beginning, you know, we had the band just playing together really nicely and gently, and now we've come to this really just hard attack on the drums. The drums sound huge, and they're absolutely huge. And now we've got Russell riding on a crash cymbal, and I love that sound. I think it's a little bit loud for this pitch, but it does help carry the song through. It does help make it very powerful. What's interesting here is that I am hearing that continuous crash cymbal, but I'm also hearing a ride underneath of it. So he could be playing that with his left hand and then using the right hand to play the snare, or it could have been double tracked. But knowing Russell, his playing as well as I do, I'm going to say he probably did that in one shot, and he's probably riding the crash with his left hand and then using his right hand to hit that snare. It's still very tight and powerful, you know, but I'm hearing a ride under a riding crash. So that's really interesting. And since that's on the right side and your snare is your left hand, probably playing it that way. I hadn't noticed that before, but that's really interesting. Now, I haven't really talked in this episode about the, what the song's about. Obviously, it's about war. And I'll just refer you back to the original episode for the discussion on the lyrics. But I will say about this part is it really kind of gives you that sense of the chaos of war, the intensity of it. I've never been to war personally. I mean, I've had battles with people, but I've never been to war. So I can only imagine, through seeing movies and things like that. I'll tell you a quick story. When I saw the movie Saving Private Ryan, I had read that, some of the soldiers that were there had said that it was the most realistic interpretation of what they actually experienced. They said they'd never seen anything like that, didn't know how Spielberg did it. And he really did pull off something amazing in that movie, I have to say. I remember the next day I was talking to my grandmother. Now, my grandmother was a German citizen during World War II. My grandfather was an Italian fighting for the United States because my family emigrated from Italy. I think he was born in Italy, but moved to the United States at some point with them. Anyway, whether it was before or not, I'm not sure. But in any case, he was fighting for the United States. And they met in an officers club during World War II. So anyway, day after I saw Saving Private Ryan, I mentioned to her, hey, I don't know if you're going to want to see this movie. It is very graphic. It might trigger some things for you. So I just kind of wanted to warn you ahead of time. And she said that she had been meaning to watch it. She was very curious about it, but, she appreciated the heads up. She said, by the way, I have a newspaper clipping to send you. So I thought, okay, a couple days later in the mail, I get a newspaper clipping and I open it up and the article has a picture of some soldiers on it. And the headline was something like, soldiers about to board the boats to go to Normandy or to go invade Normandy. And smack dab in the middle of that picture was my grandfather. Now, he had passed some years before this, so I didn't get the chance to ask him about it. But when I was a kid, he would never talk about the war. He just never would. And it wasn't until I saw this movie where I was like, I get why you wouldn't want to talk about this, especially to a young child. Who's going to understand that kind of violence, that kind of destruction, that kind of fear and horror all around you? You know, the terror of any second something could happen to you. I mean, when the doors open to the boats and you see the first row of people just get slaughtered and you're on that boat, I mean, I can't even imagine what that must be like to go through. So when I think about a part of music like this that has this kind of intensity, and even though it's not chaotic, I mean, there's not like, you know, a crazy guitar solo or a crazy organ solo going over it. You feel an intensity. You feel a huge thing is happening all around you because the music is so strong. And then you've got these high wails coming from Bernie over the top of it, but they're kind of buried, and you almost feel like those are the screams of soldiers, of things that are happening around them. Maybe they've been hit, or they see their buddy get hit, or, you know, whatever. They're just scared, you know. And it really kind of makes me think about that movie and think about my grandfather and, you know, all the other people that had to go through that I don't know or didn't know. I might have known some of their families. I don't know, but that is what this music represents. And I don't know that I would have made that connection without, you know, knowing that this was a song about war. Like if I'd never paid attention to the lyrics, I might just think that this was a super intense piece of music. But when you couple it with the story, this, I have to say, would be one of the most powerful things I've heard Uriah Heep do. Just damn. I mean, seriously, this is just such an amazing, powerful song. And I don't even have words really at this point. I mean, it's so overwhelming. And that ending, I mean, it's haunting, isn't it? And that would be, you know, again, a great representation of war. You know, whenever the shells are done, or that battle is over, or somebody, you know, I don't know how that actually happens. I don't know when somebody goes, okay, this one's over, because how would you know? There isn't somebody else hiding just on the other side of the hill or in a little niche or something with a rifle. I mean, how would you ever be able to go, okay, we can breathe for a minute? How would you know? It's absolutely insane to think about. And I think Uriah Heep has done such an amazing job on this song. You know, when I first looked at the song length, I remember thinking this before I had heard the song when I was queuing everything up, and I looked, I'm like, wow, this is a long song. And I thought, I bet there's spots where it can be cut down. And as a music, you know, thinking from a producer standpoint, and I've had to make some really hard decisions on some of my own songs, I would say there's probably arguments for where, okay, this part maybe went on a little bit too long. We could probably trim 20 seconds here, 10 seconds there. But honestly, I wouldn't want to, especially not the end. I mean, maybe in the first section, but especially not the end of this song. It is way too intense, way too powerful. It's just way too good for me to come in and say, yeah, I think they should have shaved this down a little bit. Like, this is a song that should be on the radio, but would rarely get any play just because of the length of it. And that's a shame. I don't even see a radio edit being able to represent this song well. You know, you think 2.5 to 3 minutes, no way. Absolutely no way. this song needs to be experienced in its entirety. And I'm really glad that this is the kind of song that makes me glad that I've gone through the whole process of doing the show over the last couple of years, because this is one of the most amazing pieces of music I think that the band's ever written. Definitely cannot wait to hear the new album. I will be back as soon as I have my copy. Like I've said in the previous episodes, it could be very well a late episode on the 27th, which might be the morning of the 28th in England. I don't know. It just depends on when my copy arrives. As soon as I have it, I will start doing episodes. Again, I have not listened to the single that was released. There are 2 versions of it on the deluxe CD. So my first episode will have those 2 versions. I was going to do the episode on it, and then I decided, well, since there are 2 versions, I better not, because they'll be too disconnected for me. And I really don't like to listen to singles ahead of an album. I like to listen to the album in its entirety. So that's just me, just the way I choose to do things. But definitely, it's hard not to listen to it because I really want to hear it. But I'll be back with season 30 as soon as I have that CD in my hand, and we'll start rolling on those episodes. In the meantime, I have pretty much closed off the Patreon, but if you guys did want to support the show, make a donation, there's a couple things you can do. One, please leave a review on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts or iTunes or whichever one that you have. Should be able to do it on all 3, and they go into the same database. Also, if you would like to help out with the ongoing cost of the show, they will not end. As long as I'm alive, I will keep this show on the loop. I have to pay a fee for it every year. So if you would, there is a PayPal page or section at the very bottom of the website, www.scotthaskin.com. Go to the bottom of the page and you'll see that box for PayPal. You can click that, and that donation will come to me, and I'll put that towards the ongoing cost of the show. Apart from that, just keep listening, help spread the word, share, let people know that the show is back with some new episodes. You know, it's one thing when the show's consistent and it's part of your schedule. You're like, well, when I'm eating my morning breakfast or taking the dog for a walk or whatever it is you're doing and you're listening to the show, then it just stops and your routine changes, right? It's kind of hard to get back into that routine. So, letting people know that the show is back for a couple of seasons would be great. I appreciate anything that you guys do to help spread the word about the band and the awareness of the show so that we can keep highlighting all the amazing music that Uriah Heep has created and given to us over the last 52 plus years. Been absolutely incredible, and they're still at it, which I love. And I have to thank Mick for that, because he's been the one constant, the one person that's kept this band together through everything. Even when, when times were dark, like, after Conquest, it could have been over right then. And he goes, nope, I'm going to reinvent the band and keep going. And he got Lee and Bob Daisley, and just amazing at what he's done. And now the band that he's put together seems to be the most solid lineup. I'm not talking about in number of years, because you can't compete with that. I'm talking about, the way that they work together, the way that they play together. They seem to just all get along so well. You can't ask for anything more than that in a band. And to be able to do that and create such stunning music, what more could you possibly want? So until the next episode, until we start season 30, Chaos and Colors, cheers, guys. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!